This is Mishnah Gimel. And there's a prohibition against professional writing on Chol HaMoed. Good. However, there are exceptions. Who are they? Kiddushay Nashim, to write a shtar erusin, a shtar of kiddushin between a man and a woman, betrothal. The gitin, a get, shovarin, which are receipts for loans, daitiki, which is a certain kind of a gifting writ, matana, which is another kind of gifting writ, pruzbul, the famous document which you hand over a collection of your loans to the Beit Din, so Shemitah doesn't cancel them. Igrot shum, this is if the Beit Din estimates the value of somebody's property for purposes of a lien, etc., and they write that down. Igrot mazon, if a widow comes to the Beit Din and says that the state isn't paying her regular food stipend. Shitre chalitza, if a woman got chalitza, levirate marriage was cancelled by chalitza, she has to have a shtar that indicates she's a free woman. Meunim is if we'll deal with this a lot in Masachet Yevamot very soon. If a girl under the age of 12, under the age, shall we say, needs to be married off for whatever reason or another, because socially not being married is very unprotected, is very vulnerable, etc., and her father is not alive, then her mother or brothers can marry her off, but it's Kiddushin D'Rabbanan, and when she reaches age, if she's not interested in staying with her husband, she can walk out. That's called miyun. But she needs a shtar to indicate that she's a mema'enet. Shitre Virurin, now on the page I wrote it as Zabla. Zabla is a din in the third paragraph of Sanhedrin, that if the two litigants are going against each other, each one can choose a dayan, and the two dayanim together choose a third dayan. Zeb bor el echad, vein borin. So that the shtar that indicates who they've chosen can be written. Zerot beitin, if the beitin makes an enactment. V'igrot shavashut. Igrot shavashut are just letters that you can write. In other words, so it's non-professional. So anything that's a particular need that cannot wait till after Chol HaMoed, or something that is really non-professional can be written. The only item we're going to deal with in the Gemara is the issue of Kiddushin. Amar Shmuel, mutar la'areis isha b'chol HaShamod. Shmuel says you're allowed to get betrothed on Chol HaMoed, even though you're not allowed to get married, as we saw in the first parak. Shami kadmenu acher, because what's the concern? The concern is that if you don't betroth this girl today, somebody else will come along. That's why you're allowed even to get betrothed on Tisha B'Av. Perhaps he has support from our Mishnah. Right, the first item on our list is Kiddushin. My love Shitre Kiddushin Mamish, is it not the way I presented in the Mishnah? Shtar Kiddushin. It says Harayat Muasa the Bishtar Zet. So no, Shitra Psikta. No, what it is what we kind of refers to as Tnoim. There's an agreement between the two sides of what each set of parents is going to provide for their newlywed children. Rav Gidol, famous statement of Rav, Kama atano ten levincha, kach v'kach, how much are you going to give to your son to marry my daughter? This much. Kama atano ten levitcha, and how much are you giving your daughter to come marry my son? Kach v'kach, amdu v'kitshu, and then they immediately have kiddushin, kana, right, kanu. Then the kinyan, the agreement that they just made, becomes valid by virtue of the kiddushin. These are things for which you don't necessarily need a shtar, but the amounts are written down in a shtar. That can be written on Chol HaMoed. Good. Perhaps that is supported by the Mishnah in the first parak that says you're not allowed to get married or do yibum because it's a simcha. But what's not listed there? Hala ares shari. So what's left out is erusin, is betrothal. Betrothal is mutter. So for the fact that betrothal is not mentioned in the Mishnah, and we all assume betrothal would be less of an issue on Chol HaMoed because it's not as big of a simcha, that it's mutar. So no, not necessarily. Lo mibaya kamar. Perhaps it's the opposite. Lo mibaya la areish lo kavin mitzvah. It's certainly the case in this way of thinking that I cannot be betrothed because there's no mitzvah that I'm accomplishing. Aval el afilu sanami to kavin mitzvah. But even getting married, which is a mitzvah, usher. Aha. But so, in other words, I still don't have proof for Shmuel's position that you're allowed to get betrothed on Chol HaMoed. Perhaps the Mishnah that says you can't get married is saying you can't even get married. And certainly you can't get betrothed. So, Toshmad, Tanarei Shmuel, Marsin, Velo Konsin. We have a Breita taught in Shmuel's Beit Midrash, which says you can get betrothed but not married. Ve'ein Osin, Su'udat Erusin. You don't make the big party of the erusin of betrothal. V'lo miyabmin, neshasim chayilo shmamina. Therefore, you can infer correctly that there is no prohibition of erusin itself on Chol HaMoed, but the big party has to wait till afterwards.